in David's apartment at odd hours. Not normal footsteps, though. She described them as dragging sounds, like someone pulling something heavy across the floor. Always between midnight and 3 in the morning. Always the same pattern. Drag, pause, drag, pause. Sometimes for an hour. Sometimes longer. The tenant in the back unit, Marcus, said he could hear what sounded like furniture being moved. But here's the thing. Every time he checked the hallway, David's door was closed, locked, and the sounds would stop the second Marcus came out. He felt watched, he said. I went over there in person. I knocked on David's door. No answer. I waited 5 minutes and knocked again. Still nothing. I put my ear to the door and heard absolutely nothing. No movement, no radio, no indication anyone was even in there. But his rent was paid. He wasn't violating the lease. I couldn't just break in. For the next 2 months, the sounds continued. Sarah said she was losing sleep. Marcus asked if he could break his lease early. I told them I'd look into it. What I actually did was pull the building's history. The records showed that the building had been divided into apartments in 1987. Before that, it was a single-family home. I found the property records going back further. In 1953, a man named Daniel Reeves owned the property. The obituary in the local library's archive showed he died in that house. 1989, not 1953. My mistake. I misread the date. Actually, no. The obituary was from 1989. Daniel Reeves died in his home at that address. Age 92. No cause listed. I cross-referenced the name. There were several David Reeves in the Portland area, but the one who lived in my building, the lease he'd signed just said David Reeves. No middle initial. No phone number beyond a disconnected cell. When I tried to look up his background for the original rental application, my property manager said those records had been lost in an office move. That should have been a red flag, but I let it go. The dragging sounds got worse. Sarah moved out mid-lease, forfeiting her deposit just to get out. Marcus started keeping a log of the times he heard the sounds. Exact times, exact durations. He showed me one day, pages and pages of timestamps. 12:47 a.m. to 1:33 a.m. 1:15 a.m. to 2:09 a.m. 12:52 a.m. to 3:04 a.m. It's random, Marcus said, pointing at the times. But never after 3:30, never before midnight. It's like clockwork, but not. Does that make sense? It didn't. But I noticed something else looking at his log. The duration was getting longer. The first entries were maybe 20, 30 minutes. By the time Marcus had been tracking it for 3 weeks, the sessions were lasting over 2 hours. I decided I needed to talk to David. Not ask permission. Actually talk to him. I waited outside the building one morning. I was going to catch him if he came out. I waited from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. I sat in my car, did some work on my laptop, and watched his window. The one small corner that wasn't completely covered. Nothing. No movement. No shadow. Nothing suggesting anyone was in there. When I finally went upstairs and knocked on his door again, a woman answered. Not David. A woman in her 70s, gray hair, wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 80s. She looked confused to see me. I'm looking for David Reeves, I said. I don't know anyone by that name, she said, and started to close the door. Wait, you live here, right? You're renting this apartment? I live here, she said. I've always lived here. The door closed. I stood there in the hallway, not understanding what I just heard. I checked the lease again. David Reeves. Signed 3 years ago. The signature looked shaky, like it was written by someone with arthritis or Parkinson's. When I knocked again 10 minutes later, no one answered. I used my master key and opened the apartment. It was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, no signs anyone had ever lived there. No dust on the floors. They were clean, like they'd been swept recently. But no person. No clothes in the closet. No food in the kitchen. Nothing. I never found David Reeves. He was never in that apartment. But for the next 6 months, the sounds continued. The dragging, the moving, always between midnight and 3:30 a.m. Always a little longer than the last time. I eventually sold the building at a loss. The new owners lasted 4 months before putting it back on the market. I never asked them why, but I kept that check. The 3-year advance rent payment from a man who, as far as I can prove, never actually lived there. The cashier's check cleared immediately. The bank has no record of who purchased it. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, and I think about what was happening in that empty apartment night after night. What was being dragged across that floor? Why it needed 3 years?